Open fire. Now that I have your attention.
Welcome to the Chiss Ascendancy podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chiss Ascendancy. This is Josiah, and obviously if you're here, it's because the new trailer for The Mandalorian Grogu dropped. Let's check it out. You know the rules. We're going to watch it first, and then we're going to break it down piece by piece. Here we go. Cool R2 unit.
Hey, never touch the buttons. I can use some information.
Whoa, for this price, I'll tell you whatever you want.
I'm looking for a hut.
Close for the night. Thank you.
Gangsters, war criminals.
Long live the Empire.
We'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
Strap in.
You will suffer. And then it will be his turn.
Before going into harm's way, check your armor. The kid will live centuries beyond me. I won't always be around to protect him.
Are you scared? You should be.
Do we run? Or do we fight?
I like this kid.
What are you waiting for? Let's save the rest for after dinner.
That is awesome. So, for those of you who are with us, again, my name is Josiah. This is the Chiss Ascendancy podcast. That's Boba Fett right there. And so, what we're gonna do, what we do every time we have a trailer or a teaser, things like that, we watch it one way through. So we've done that. Now we're gonna go back piece by piece and check out and see what we see so far. Maybe point out Easter eggs, different things. Maybe the like we say every time, the average fan or the hardcore Star Wars fan is looking forward to this May. So let's do that. So obviously we've got the very cool, sunset with the X-Wings. We saw this in the Force Awakens with the TIE Fighters. We saw it in Mandalorian Season 1 with Mando, with the kind of dragon-looking thing flying in Mandalorian Season 1. So we've got lots of callbacks here, not just to Star Wars, but other media as well. New Razor Crest here. Now, I know Jon Favreau said it's the same model. I hope that we at least get some explanation as to where this came from, because several times throughout season 1, especially of The Mandalorian, we talked about how rare it was. Are you still driving that old piece of junk? It feels a lot like the Millennium Falcon. So some of my Star Wars friends who've been talking, how weird would it feel if the Millennium Falcon got blown to smithereens and then all of a sudden, Han shows up with another YT-1300, 2 weeks later. So I hope we get some explanation, but who knows?
Never touch the buttons.
Those of you with kids can relate to Grogu there. Now, I think this planet we're on right here at the very beginning, where he's going to run into this Ardenian, I want to say, is the species. This is Rio Durant's species from Solo. I love Jon Favreau as Rio Durant. You got a little snippet right here.
You've never been to a Minoc roast on Ardinia. It's nuts.
Rio is fantastic, so I'm glad to see another Ardinian. I think that this planet that we're on right here, this is Nar Shaddaa. Now that has a lot of funny history with the podcast itself, but for those of you who are not familiar, Nar Shaddaa it's part of that seedy underbelly of mercenaries and bounty hunters and the Hutts and the cartels and all of those parts of the Star Wars underworld. Is Nar Shaddaa is a big part of that, and so I think Din here in this scene is flying through Nar Shaddaa looking for the Hutts. That's where we find him.
I can use some information.
Whoa, for this price, I'll tell you whatever you want.
I'm looking for a hut.
Close for the night. Thank you.
Now, obviously here, we don't know if this is still in Nar Shaddaa, if this is on Nal Hutta, wherever we might be here. You got to remember, this is a separate scene, it seems like, from later when we see Din with his helmet taken off. And then if you look over to the sides here, you've got some really cool sentry droids. I can't tell if those are like full droids or if they have somebody inside them. But that symbol right there on the doors that's parting, that is the Hutt symbol. That's their faction. So the Hutt group, he's going to see the twins. So we can't tell here yet. The twins obviously were introduced in Book of Boba Fett. And so we're not sure if these guys, this could be a completely separate scene where he's going before them first. And then maybe he, mucks up what they got going on. And that's why he's brought before them kind of on bended knee later.
Gangsters.
I want to point out one thing really quick, if I can.
Close for the night. Thank you.
Gangsters.
If you pause it right here, they got 2 droid bodyguards. At least one of them is a B2 super battle droid, which is pretty awesome. Call back there to obviously the Clone Wars and prequel era.
War criminals.
Long live the Empire.
And then you've got all these people talking about the Empire. This seems to be that snow planet where from the original trailer, we see Mando blowing up those AT-ATs. This seems like this is all in that same place. So this could very well be something like the opening scene where we're seeing the Imperial remnant get together. They're trying to consolidate their forces and make a stab back at the New Republic after the fall of the Empire. So I think that's what's happening here. I think this is early on in the movie, if I had to guess.
Empire.
We'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
You got Grogu with the cute little salute. And then obviously, we've kind of known this for a while. It looks like Mando is being sent on a mission to take out these Imperial warlords or these remaining, in the Legends material, it were the Moffs. The Moffs spread, right? And so they were needing to be hunted down. They were the ones that went and had their little factions. If you can see it in your mind's eye, the Galactic Conquest style from the old Battlefront games, they were going into the borders of the unknown regions and known space and things like that, kind of trying to cut out almost their own little miniature empire after there was a power vacuum and Palpatine's death.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
I want to point out, so I saw a lot of people saying that they thought these were HK assassin droids or the droids we saw in Ahsoka Season 1. I don't think that's the case. We saw some product reveals earlier last week from Hasbro with the Mandalorian and Grogu products coming out. I think this is on Nal Hutta. I think these are droids that are owned or work for the Hutts. One of the droids or one of the toys that was revealed last week by Hasbro was a mercenary droid, and everybody was freaking out. My favorite Star Wars podcast, Blast Points, was like, we can die happy. We've seen a droid with a cape, that type of thing. So what we've got here is these are those droids. I think this is on Nal Hutta. I think that these ships that are being launched here, I think that's Nal Hutta. I think that we're seeing the Hutt homeworld here. I think that's what we're seeing. I think those droids work for the Hutts.
Strap in.
this obviously, for those of you who are prequel fans, more importantly, Clone Wars fans, this is the most exciting, most great part of the whole trailer. We finally get Imbo in live action, and he's got his dog with him. Now, here's the thing. Either they're redoing a little bit of canon here, which is totally fine. We actually saw Imbo in recent Star Wars lore post the Disney merger. So in the Aftermath trilogy, if you remember, whenever we had that first Force Friday when the Force Awakens was coming out, we had toys, we had comics, we had books. The Aftermath trilogy was the first that I can think of, the first trilogy of books that came out post the Disney purchase. And in one of those books, I want to say it was in the third book, which is Empire's End, you had these little interludes is what they were called, where you introduce characters like Cobb Vanth. That's where we heard the story of Boba Fett's armor being taken by the Jawas and Cobb Vanth taking that from them. So we actually saw Imbo in Part 3, Empire's End of the Aftermath trilogy. Now, the dog, I can't remember the dog's name, but it wasn't with him. And so either they're rewriting that and that dog was just off screen, as we say in Stranger Things land, everything just happens off screen. We don't know if that's the case. I hope that it's the same dog that we saw in the Clone Wars. That's all that matters to me. But we've got the dog here with him, and it looks like Imbo is coming up on that homestead that the Mandalorian and Grogu have at the end of Mando season 3. So unfortunately, as what was rumored, it seems like at least partially we're going to see Mandalorian facing off against Imbo. Now, I know that there are hardcore Mandalorian fans out there. I love the Mandalorian. I'm a hardcore Boba Fett guy, and so I know me and my brother Samuel have clashed on this. If Boba Fett and Mandalorian, at the peak of their powers, as they say, were to meet up in some back alley somewhere, I'm 100% a Boba Fett guy. I think Boba Fett waxes the floor with him. I think a lot of the times that we saw Mando, and especially in season 1 and parts of season 2, when he beats these creatures, beats these big bads, it's a lot of times by the skin of his teeth. Or you had the the Mudhorn from season 1 had him absolutely dead to rights. That's when we first saw Grogu interfere on his behalf. So a character like Imbo, I can see getting the upper hand on the Mandalorian here, even though obviously Imbo would probably be past his prime, because you got to remember, this is at least, you're looking at the 5 to 7. We don't know how far down the road this is. I assume it's pretty quickly after seasons, 1, 2, and 3 are pretty sequential. So you're looking at a minimum of 5 years after the Battle of Yavin. So you're looking realistically, 6, maybe 6.5 years after the Battle of Yavin. So Imbo, you got to think his prime in the Clone Wars, you had 20 years since Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope, and then you had another 4 or 5 years before the end of the original trilogy. So you're looking at about 30 years past his quote-unquote prime. So, I don't know how the Kyuzo species ages, but in human years, if his prime is 30, Imbo's 60 at this case, right? So obviously, it's Star Wars, but we look like we're going to see Imbo versus the Mandalorian on Mando's home turf here.
You will suffer.
He will suffer. There's a great shot of Imbo being backlit by some lightning here.
And then it will be his turn.
So it's you will suffer, and then it will be his turn. Now, again, you can see here in the middle, this is the sigil for the Hutt clans. So again, could this be the same scene? I don't know. To me, the vibe I get, speculating here, if the Hutt send Imbo after the Mandalorian, right? If that's the case, then he may be seeking an audience with them first, and then if I don't see Din walking in to be chastised or to put him or Grogu's life at risk without being forced to do so, and especially he would never, ever, ever take his helmet off without being forced to do so. So from that earlier scene where he's on the outside of the doors and the doors are coming open, it looks to me as if he's going in there of his own free will, and now we see a scenario where he's on his hands, not on his hands and knees, but he's on his knees, and one of those droids is taking his helmet off. So to me, these are two separate moments in the movie. We'll see. Some pretty strong resolve there from Din.
Check your armor. The kid will.
You got 3 Anzellans here. You know, my brother's going to go nuts with all the little all the little sounds that these Anzellans are going to make throughout the movie.
Live centuries beyond.
Now, we don't know if this here, we see Grogu kind of on his own journey. I want to point out to you, is this on Nal Hutta? Is this on, you know, even Dagobah? We don't know. I will say it's very symbolic, at least, the fact that he's walking through an area that's got a lot of trees, got a lot of moss, similar to what Yoda lived in on Dagobah. And if you notice here, he's got a cane. Is that Yoda's cane? We don't know.
Me. I won't.
You know, just like this. We never saw Dagobah during the original trilogy during the daytime. It was always dark. It was always foggy. It always seemed like it was nighttime. So maybe this is Dagobah. Maybe this is during the day. Maybe, you know, I will say I do feel like Grogu, personally, is he cute? Yes. Is he limited as a character? Also, yes, in my opinion, from what we've seen so far. He can't talk, he can barely communicate, you know, especially those first couple of seasons of The Mandalorian. Anything he did that required any amount of energy, he's completely exhausted afterward. So I'm hoping that we see a different level of maturity, and maybe that's what is going on here. Maybe The Mandalorian, you know, maybe a little speculation mode here. Maybe the Mandalorian gets captured there and he's in front of the Hutts and he's the one that's being held captive. And Grogu kind of has to do a little maturing and soul searching on his own. Maybe Grogu's the star of this show, which would be different, which would be awesome. And if that's the case, if he does journey to Dagobah to try to learn about some of the history of his species, you know, following in Yoda's footsteps or whatever, I don't know.
Always be around to protect him.
There you got Gracchus the Hutt. We assume this big buff Hutt is Gracchus. Rata the Hutt, not Gracchus the Hutt. Gracchus is from the comics. Rata the Hutt, we assume, is this guy right here. This is Jabba the Hutt's son, and obviously we're in an arena. I want to say this is on Nar Shaddaa, that first place we're talking about, where all of the smugglers and everybody and the bounty hunters meet up. I think this is that space. I think this is where we'll see Din's looking for a Hutt. This is who he's going to find, Rata the Hutt.
Are you scared?
This, I know Imbo was a huge star. This was one of the coolest parts of the trailer for me. So we're on that same planet, it looks like, where Grogu is walking around. He's got his stick. He's kind of doing some meditation and stuff like that. I had work all day today. And so I went through and I watched other reviews and, you know, I'm not saying I'm the number one. Obviously, I'm not the number one Star Wars podcast out there. So I'm totally happy to go and watch other people's reactions. That's part of the magic of Star Wars, is experiencing it together. And I loved watching other people's reactions, thoughts, and takes and stuff like that. And Alex from Star Wars Explained actually said, I'm not saying this is him, but I kind of had a weird feeling about this character here on screen. And you know, he pointed out first, so I will not take any credit for it, but this guy looks a lot like Yoda's master from Legends. And I can't remember what that character's name is. Let's look it up. Yoda's master from Legends. Nada del Gormo is the name. And here's what's interesting is if you look at this right here, open, let's see. This character here, obviously this is in Legends. We don't know who Yoda's master was in canon, but tell me this guy on a planet like Dagobah or something similar doesn't look like this guy right here, right? We're in the swamp. You know, obviously the head shape is different and stuff like that, but kind of a snake-like body. Pretty interesting. Very interesting. So who knows? Do we get a little bit more of Yoda backstory through this character, if that is the case? And the other reason that I think that, before I even watched anybody else's reviews, the verbiage that this character uses calls you back to Yoda in a big way.
Scared?
He says, "Are you scared?"
You should.
Grogu says yes.
Scared? You should be.
And so obviously that calls back to Yoda talking to Luke in his hut. And Luke tells him, I'm not afraid. And you have that really creepy Yoda, you will be, right? We'll remember that. This next shot right here is very, very cool. If you are following the podcast on Instagram, I posted a bingo card talking about different things. Obviously, if you've been watching for any length of time, we love to guess, we love to speculate, we love to throw crazy theories out there. It paid off huge for us. And in the Mandalorian season 1 or season 2, episode 1, I was like, hey, how crazy would it be if we got a crate dragon? And then of all things, we got a crate dragon in the very next episode. And I was so close, guys. I had Luke Skywalker on there and I was like, hey, Luke's probably not going to show up, but that will be a fun thing. And I was like, maybe I should put something a little bit more niche. Maybe I should put something a little bit crazier. Maybe I should put something a little bit more Chiss Ascendancy style. And I swear to you guys, I had this freaking thing pulled up. I had the dragon snake pulled up because I was thinking about Nal Hutta, and I was thinking about the creatures of Nal Hutta, and I was thinking about how this episode of the Clone Wars, where you see freaking Obi-Wan with the dragon snake, and it would have been so perfect. I almost put it, and I didn't, and I'm so mad at myself. But it looks like this is a dragon snake.
Do we run?
Maybe Mandalorians being fed to this dragon snake by the twins, something like that.
Or do we fight?
I like this kid.
You got Zeb, obviously a big plus. You know, Mando's breaking out of underground tunnels on Nal Hutta, it looks like, I assume here. Cute little baby Rodian.
What are you waiting for?
You know, and earlier I was mentioning maybe Grogu is the one that ends up saving Din for once. That would be really cool. And there's a part of my brain that's like, well, he doesn't know how to fly a ship. He's 2 years old or whatever. But you know, they're showing you, maybe they are showing you little breadcrumbs of things along the way of him having a better grasp on technology than I'm giving him credit for.
Let's save the rest for after dinner.
I've got 4 kids, so I can't relate more to the let's save the cool looking delicious Girl Scout cookies for after dinner, and Grogu reluctantly takes a huge bite out of that last cookie he has in his hand. So I don't know, guys. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's a ton of stuff to look forward to. Obviously, you know, what I think it's going to be is I think that there's a power vacuum. I think that the Mandalorian is working obviously for the New Republic. His goal is to do what he can to help them rid the galaxy of the Imperial remnant. We've still got things going on. The Empire, you know, with Moff Gideon destroying the Razor Crest, you know, him having a hold over Mandalorian until just last season. Obviously, the Mandalorian has a grudge against the Imperial remnant, right? And I think that his idea will be he's totally on board with taking them down. And at some point, the Hutts are going to get involved. At some point, that brings people like Imbo into the mix. So you never know. You know, you had the twins. Boba had somewhat of a relationship with the twins. You've got Black Chrysanthemum, who had a relationship with Boba because of all that. So there's a lot of things that could come of this. You know, this could be a fun little hour and a half, 2 hour long adventure of just like, you know, it just gets you out of the real world and into Star Wars. Or it could be something that has heavier implications leading towards something like the Heir of the Empire movie type, you know, adaptation. I know it's not an adaptation of Heir of the Empire, but you have different things that Dave's working on where all the things lead up to this big bad showdown with Thrawn and the Imperial, the real true combined Imperial remnant. You know, so I don't think they're going to finish that story in Ahsoka. I don't think they're going to finish that story in The Mandalorian. I think it's going to be Avengers style Mandalorian and Grogu and Ahsoka and even Luke or Han, people like that against the might of Thrawn if he's got the Night Sisters on his side where they're basically unlimited. You know, it's a brilliant twist on the old Heir to the Empire stuff, which ironically we just got done doing a breakdown of that whole series. But the Sparty cloning cylinders that are no longer a thing, having the Night Sisters who are a different Star Wars evil in and of themselves, having the reanimation of dead bodies, basically replacing the cloning cylinders from the old stuff, is a fantastic replacement and almost like a more evil, more spooky version of that. So in the old, I'll look this up for you here while we're here. Back in the old Heir of the Empire stuff, they went to Mount Tantus. All of these here in these vats are clones, and they're bred in like 20 days, 30 days, 40 days, something like that. So the Thrawn, up until he was betrayed by Rook, had a crazy supply of soldiers. And so maybe having, the Sacred Mothers, those of you who don't know who that is, I'll put these here on the screen. These are basically witches. These are Star Wars witches who, we saw all kinds of what looked like coffins being loaded onto the ships getting ready to go back to the known galaxy. Again, maybe this is where all this is headed. All of the Imperial warlords, we think it could very well be that the character that we see, and I'll show you who I'm talking about, the character that we see, that's the Imperial warlord at the very beginning of this trailer, maybe that's who we're supposed to be thinking is the big bad. But at the same time, we thought that the client was the big bad in the Mandalorian, and then Moff Gideon pops up, right?
The Empire.
So this guy here, he just said, "Long live the Empire." He may very well mean it, but does that mean that he's the one that's really the big bad? Obviously, he's part of that, that Shadow Council is the wrong word, but he's part of that council that meets up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So you have these guys who are waiting for Thrawn's return. They're waiting on, Project Necromancer, which, if those of you who don't know, is leading toward, that's leading toward the Emperor's return. Now, obviously, that's all pie in the sky. We know it comes to pass, but that doesn't mean they believe it. So if you look at guys like this, I want to say this guy here, Long Live the Empire, is also this guy right here. I think that's him. So, or maybe it's him right here, actually. This guy right here with a little bit bigger beard. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One of them being Captain Pelion talking to Gideon. Now, is Gideon really gone, or was that a clone that was killed? You got all those kinds of things out there. So again, point being, we're made to think this is the big bad, but all of these guys are just part of a council, one of the leading members of which was Moff Gideon. All of these guys are waiting on Thrawn's return. Thrawn's return is what brings the Imperial remnant to the forefront of the possibility of winning this war. So we got a lot to look forward to, but that's our breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If I missed anything, please leave a comment back down below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out our other videos, and also follow us on TikTok and Instagram, where we're posting almost daily. Thank you guys so much for your support. Remember, the Force will be with you always, and we'll see you next time.